Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aim High podcast. I'm your host, Ben Shin, and today's guest is someone whose leadership has helped shape how millions of people consume entertainment, Cheng. Mr. Cheng is currently the head of Prime Video US at Amazon, where he leads the entire domestic business, overseeing strategy, content, marketing, and live sports. Prior to this, he served as Chief Operating Officer at Amazon Studios, helping scale global operations and deliver some of Prime Video's biggest hits like The Boys, Reacher, and The Marvelous Miss Maisel. Before joining Amazon, Albert spent nearly 15 years at Disney, where he helped lead the company's digital transformation, launching video-on-demand platforms to overseeing product, marketing, and operations across the Disney ABC television group. I'm so excited to talk to you today, Mr. Cheng. Thank you for being on the Aim High podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Ben. This is exciting.
All right, to start off, we'll first talk about your childhood and upbringing. Because this podcast is centered around being an Asian American leader in business, it is important to first understand each guest's childhood and upbringing as an Asian American. Ideas instilled within you from your parents and environment may have helped you become successful in where you are today. So could you explain your childhood situation growing up? Where did you grow up? Did you have any siblings? What were family dynamics like?
Sure. So I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and to parents that had immigrated from Taiwan, and my entire family originally from mainland China. So I grew up in a household that spoke Chinese, and I had a younger sister. And both my parents pretty much raised me with pretty strong Confucian values in terms of, Eastern value system as I grew up.
Yeah, and like from your parents' experiences, like immigrating, or did they immigrate to Hawaii? You said.
Well, my dad had spent a lot of his years in America first as a student. So he had gone to college, grad school, and worked in the United States, and then went back to Taiwan, where he then met my mom. They got married, and then they moved to Hawaii. And that's
nice.
The order.
Yeah, and how did your parents' experience, I guess, influence your perspective on like work and success and like your future, I guess?
Like a lot of probably Chinese Asian families, your education is the most important thing, and getting good
Definitely.
grades is probably your biggest priority, because education and good grades opens up, more higher education, more grades, and more performance, and then more higher education, because those are stepping stones to better opportunities, and opens up a lot of different ways that you can think about how you want to, build your career in your job, and have the job that you want, hopefully.
Yeah, and did your parents put like a lot of pressure or put high expectations on you, and also you said your sibling when you were younger?
Always,
Yeah.
grades were important, and it's funny. I think, depending on the varying degrees. A's were sort of expected, B's were sort of tolerated, and anything below that was just not great, and you'd have to figure out how to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, and did you feel like any pressure to conform to certain expectations, either from like your family or from like your broader community, and like how did you handle that?
I think what your parents come in with an expectation of. I think they, like any parent, they came with expectations on having making sure that their kids would have a prosperous life, in what they do. And I think what they worked off of were careers and types of jobs that would make them feel more comfortable that you would have that life, right? So the typical types of jobs they would expect someone to have are those that required higher advanced learning, like being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or getting a PhD, all of these things which they know and understand to be successful careers that provide a really good livelihood. So that is their expectation, right? So when they talk to me, it's like, hey, explore these sets of careers. I don't think they were very specific around a job that I needed to have, but they said, here are the types of jobs that are
that you
Correct.
should have.
That you should have, and you should work towards it, and
Yeah.
they will provide you a great future.
Mm. So were there any specific like experiences or events or lessons learned during your childhood that you believe set some foundation for your future success, or just like some like foundational skills or like habits that your parents or events around you like helped you with?
Yeah, I think one, working hard,
Mm-hmm.
the work ethic, it has been really has been helpful because I probably work more than the average person, and I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
and it's normal for me, right?
Yeah.
So that has helped and influenced the way I worked in every single job. So being diligent, making sure you're working hard, putting the hours, making sure that the output of that work is at a high quality that you feel proud of. Sometimes a little bit of perfectionism kind of slips in because that nothing is you couldn't be substandard in anything you do.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that you bring that I brought with me.
Yeah, definitely. Just among a lot of my guests, just like the things you've been talking about, emphasis on education and then hard work and everything that you do, like going above and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were growing up, was there a moment in your childhood that kind of like shaped your ambitions for later in life? Were you like, oh, I want to do this? Or was it always kind of like your parents giving you, oh, these are the options that you should look at? Or was there ever one that you were like, I want to do that?
Well, I think ever since I was a kid, and what's influenced what I do today is that I was always interested in the world of entertainment. So whether it be a movie or a television show or music, and like a lot of kids growing up, right, you probably are interested in all of these things. And I was extraordinarily interested to the point of when I was a kid, I would know who the directors were. I knew
Wow.
who I had a sense of which movie might actually get nominated for an Oscar, even at 10. Like I would basically, I was always the person who said, "Hey, we should go to this movie," and then when we go to the movie, we see it, it's like, "Oh, it's probably going to get an Oscar nomination," and 9 out of 10, 10 times I probably was right. And
Really?
so there was those types of things that I kind of loved doing, and I spent a lot of time in front of the TV set, probably more than I got my 10,000 hours of television watching probably before the age of 6.
Yeah.
And so these are things that I love to do, but they were always things that my parents said that are hobbies. It's okay, you can do these. It's all fine that you're interested in them. They couldn't understand why I was so interested in it. But here are the things that you do for your job, and then here's the things that you can do to enjoy during your off time, which was the entertainment, movies, TVs, and music stuff.
Yeah. So like going into like college or something, you never really thought of like, I don't know, being like a film director or anything like that. It was always like, this is what you need to make money, basically.
Yeah,
And like,
and during my hobby was basically watching, writing music or watching TV or going to movies and just liking it. I liked it from that standpoint, but at the end of the day, you know, being an engineer was kind of like the priority when I was in college.
yeah. And moving on to the second part of the podcast, talking about education and early career, I saw you studied material sciences and engineering at MIT, and then you got you got a job as an engineer at the Boeing company for just a year. And first off, like, how was that experience? Did you like being an engineer? Like, how was it?
Yeah, that's when you look at it, you can see I was an engineer for 1 year. That'll tell you
Yeah.
a lot. Which is, I think there's a difference between studying and doing.
Mm.
And when you go through 4 years of college, thinking, hey, I think I want to be an engineer. This will probably get me on a good track. I did fine in my engineering, degree, and my grades were fine. But I think the one thing that was missing was that I lacked passion for it.
Mm.
I didn't love it. I could do
Yeah.
it, but I
Yeah.
didn't love it. And so when I finally actually went to work doing the job, it became really apparent that I did not have the passion for it. And so it was very difficult to feel, um, it's very difficult to see how I can propel myself moving forward in my career if I didn't like the subject matter that I was working on. And
Yeah.
that was a critical point in that year working at Boeing where I had to really think about well, if I'm not happy doing this job and I spent 4 years investing in my skill set and my knowledge to do this, then what should I do? And
Yeah.
that was a pretty tough year to kind of navigate
Mm-hmm.
and realize that at that time, I still didn't know what I wanted
Yeah.
because that's why I went to business school. Good way to stall not
Yeah.
knowing what you wanted to do is to go to grad school and particularly business school because it gives you time to figure it out.
Yeah. And so like kind of adding on to that, like why business school? You just like didn't really know what else to do. You kind of were just like a little bit lost. So you're like, why not just do that? Or like why not pursue like something else? Like why business specifically?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, even during that time, when you realize I spent my undergraduate studying this, I don't like it.
Yeah.
What's the next thing to do? And everyone will, when you're raised to get an advanced degree, okay?
Yeah.
And so you think about the next set of advanced degrees. Well, I could do medicine, I could get a law degree, or I can do a business degree.
Yeah.
Medicine was out because
Yeah.
I didn't have any undergrad to help back me up. I tried to do the law, do the LSATs, and I just
Yeah.
did not enjoy that.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, I did business because that was the one thing that I was willing to explore.
Yeah. And what did like your parents think of that decision? Were they like fine because you were still getting that like higher education, or did they want you to like stick in engineering?
I don't know. I think you probably have to ask them. uh, I'm not sure how they would have felt. I'm pretty sure they were probably anxious that I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that
Yeah.
I decided to go get a business degree, which none of my parents did, and so
Mm.
I wound up taking a path that my parents were unfamiliar with. And so I think like, if you think about Asian parents, right, they want everything laid out for their kids, right? They have a very clear idea of if they
Like the
do,
roadmap.
yeah, if they do these things, my kids will be great and it'll be okay. And so I did not take that path. So
Yeah.
as a result, they're probably nervous and they have no way to guide me. They have no advice to give me. They have no basis on which to help me figure out my future. And I think that creates anxiety
Yeah.
and concern, right? And so you get the concern, or are you sure you want to do this? Have you thought about trying this thing?
Yeah.
That's closer to what they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how was that experience getting your MBA? And did you like figure out what you were really passionate about and like what you wanted to do like after you finished the program?
Yeah, I think when I so just to when I was in that one year that I was at Boeing
Mm-hmm.
and realizing I didn't want to be a material scientist, I had a hard, a lot of introspection to understand, well, what I want to do. And one of them was to re-explore entertainment,
Mm.
right? Which, going back to what I loved doing as a kid, I said, well, what job would I get as in entertainment with an engineering degree? And there are not a lot. I think
Yeah.
the first thing I did was I applied to Walt Disney to be an Imagineer, and what got rejected. And
Yeah.
so I said, well, maybe, and that's how I kind of landed on a business degree, because in all likelihood, it was a degree that allows me to have a number of different options. Like
Mm.
even if it wasn't entertainment, I could have gone in finance, I could have been a marketing person in another industry. I
Yeah.
just felt it would give me multiple options to go.
Mm.
So by the time I went to business school, I kind of already had my eyes set on, well, how do I get into the entertainment industry? And when I get this degree, what do I have to do to, move, get a job working in that field?
Yeah. Because I saw the first job you got after you finished your MBA was at the Boston Consulting Group. Can you just like walk us through like how you got it and like what you did there?
So I got a job in management consulting, and that kind of job is essentially working a strategy firm that
Mm-hmm.
does consulting work for mostly Fortune 500 companies along a number of different strategic business problems, solving strategic business problems.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of work out of the Boston office in consumer products and in tech.
Yeah.
And when I moved to LA, I worked for Boston Consulting Group, and I did a lot of work with entertainment companies and consumer products.
And was that part when you moved to LA working with more of the entertainment, was that like intentional? Like you really want like how did you seek out that like opportunity to work on like that side with Boston
Yeah.
Consulting Group?
I think when so I worked for BCG before and after business school. Part of
Mm.
it was to make sure that I had a broader exposure to business problems because, it would help me in business school, but also if I wanted to do business, I would be able to get the exposure I needed to see what C-suite executives have to deal with. And I
Mm.
got to do the work, and it was a good experience. But I
Yeah.
also knew I had an eye towards, well, what is, going from consulting to entertainment is a big jump. So how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
And it was a deliberate thing. When I went back to BCG, I was very specific and said I would go back to the firm after business school, but I really wanted to move from Boston to LA and do more work in entertainment and media industry because I eventually wanted to move into that field. So I was
Hmm.
very transparent and open about it, and so they got me to transfer, and I went to LA, and they put me on a lot of different projects, and I stayed there for about a year, a little over a year, and then moved into my first entertainment job from there.
Yeah, and going on to that first entertainment job, like how did you join Fox Cable Networks? And like what was your job there?
Yeah, so I got into Fox cable networks first by applying like most people, uploading my resume, and then what I realized is that a former colleague of mine at BCG actually had that job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had been promoted,
Mm.
and they had not filled his position. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, is that job still open? I didn't realize that was your old job." And he
Yeah.
said, "Just send me your resume." So I sent it to him, and I got an interview to do that. And so, if there's anything that your listeners or anything like networking and reaching out and really trying to work the network system is so important to find those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. So many people have told me that with just like their stories of either just their network within like recruiters or also just like their friends. Is it's like really important to know like so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you were there then at Fox Cable, like what were you doing on a day-to-day basis? Because you were in like distribution strategy, right?
Hmm. Yeah, first I started in business development and then into distribution strategy. So when I first got there, a lot of my work was evaluating sports rights.
Mm.
So Fox Sportsnet, which at the time was a regional sports network, also FX, which is a young cable network. At this point, it's not a young cable network,
Yeah.
but looking at what type of programs to put on, how much would it cost, and what kind of business returns would the programming get us.
Hmm.
And then when I moved to distribution strategy, it was really about how do we create new opportunities for Fox's cable networks to create new products in the digital space. And at the time, it was products in digital cable. So all the different channels you would get by subscribing to the digital cable box. I'm
Yeah.
telling this to you, Ben, because you probably have no idea what that digital cable box is because it doesn't exist anymore. But it
Yeah.
was one way to actually expand the number of channels you can get on your TV set.
Mm. Yeah, and then how did that opportunity to join Disney come about?
That one came through headhunters.
Mm.
So a recruiter came and reached out and said, "Hey, there's this job opening, and is this something you're interested in?" And I looked at it and said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so, and it was an interesting one because it was a vice president level job. I was currently in a director job at Fox, so for me it was more career advancement
Yeah.
and working for Disney. So that was the other plus.
Yeah, it's like that when well you first applied to Disney, like how many years before that then? And then when you
So yeah, I applied in 19. So probably 7 years later,
yeah. So kind of
7 years
full
later,
circle.
came back full circle and I got my first job at Disney. Yeah.
Yeah. And can you explain that first role as vice president with like national accounts and distribution strategy for Disney and like what you were responsible for?
Yeah. At the time, I was responsible for negotiating distribution agreements with the big cable operators.
Mm.
So like Comcast and Charter and um, gosh, a lot of them don't exist anymore. Like DirecTV. So
Yeah.
all these are negotiations to carry Disney Channel, all the linear channel, cable networks, on cable systems to deliver to television household sets all around the U.S. And that was basically negotiating those agreements, and then also planning out our business plan, like how much we charge for it, what does that look like over the
Mm.
10 years. So a lot of the business planning around the network business.
Yeah, and you spent close to 15 years at Disney and held many very impressive roles. So could you maybe take us through the different jobs you had and how the responsibilities like evolved over time as you like made your way up, I guess?
Yeah, I think in starting with the negotiation of the cable networks, I mean that even evolved into more of a strategy role when we reorganized our sales team, and then it became then the my portfolio got bigger, meaning the scope of our networks got bigger as we merged our sales teams together. So before I was on a
Mm.
Disney team, so it was Disney Channel, Toon Disney, SoapNet, ABC Family.
Yeah.
Some of these people, some of these cable channels don't the names don't exist. They're still around.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was just like I was thinking like what are some of these things?
Yeah, Freeform is what ABC Family used to be. I'm not even sure if you watch TV anymore, Ben, but you don't. So then we merged with ESPN, and so
Mm.
my then I was helping strategy across the entire portfolio of Disney networks and ESPN, ESPN2, and all the sports stuff.
Mm.
And then it evolved where my job changed to a completely different thing, where I moved out of that my old role and into a totally new one, and I had to start building a digital team for the television group to um, help figure out how the television division would would figure out its future on broadband internet.
Mm.
And this sounds a long time ago because it really is, but in 2005, as I was taking on that role, the company had just done the first iTunes deal
Mm.
ever. And when I formulated the team, one of the big things that my team and I wound up doing is being the first company to ever stream a TV show on the internet.
Really?
So that was in 2006. So at the
Before I was
time,
born.
before you were born, Ben. Now I'm feeling really old. Before you were born, there was no TV shows or anything were actually distributed on the internet at all.
Mm.
And so we decided, like, well, let's put at the time four shows: Lost, Desperate Housewives, Commander in Chief, and Night Stalker on
Mm.
ABC.com. So literally on the website.
Yeah.
There's no streaming on phones or TV sets. It was just on a computer. And so we were the first to do that,
Yeah.
and that led to 10 years of building streaming from the beginning.
Wow. That's really cool. What were some of like your favorite projects you worked on while you were there? I mean, you were there for so long, and like the story you were telling me about just streaming like the first ever TV show like on the internet, that's really cool. But like what was it like merging with like ESPN and like sports into Disney? Like what was that experience like?
Yeah, no, merging was great. We already knew our colleagues at ESPN, and when we finally merged in one group, it was more about like, okay, now this team is managing the whole portfolio. How do we adjust all of our jobs so
Mm-hmm.
that we're covering it all? So we went through a process of like, okay, Albert, now this is not what you're doing. You're going to cover all of this, but here's what you're going to be focusing on for the company. And all in all, it was good. It was actually good. It was a good experience because the ESPN culture and Disney culture was kind of a little bit different. It was pretty different. And
Yeah.
so just being able to work with different colleagues, different styles of leadership, I particularly liked learning about ESPN's culture, which I
Mm.
think is really awesome. And
How come? Like
how,
like why about ESPN's culture like were you intrigued by?
it's just because it's so it's just the way they think about how they set goals for the company. You
Mm.
know, it's a very it's a smaller company than, let's say, the broader Disney.
Yeah.
But you know how they set goals, how they create a company culture, how they define their mission and values. Like they go through an annual wordsmithing by 80 executives in a big room, and they look at the mission statement and like it's tweaked, and they spend a lot
Wow.
of time. And that's sort of an interesting exercise to how do you get every leader, every team aligned and believing in the culture and the mission of what the company wants to do. And the mission statement
Mm.
was very important. And I still have to this day, coming out of that meeting, I still have a baseball, a customized baseball with the ESPN mission value statement, all of that, all described, and it's something you take away and go, this is how you get everyone's head in the game, no
Mm.
pun intended. And it's something I think that I took away from as things that are really powerful that can
Mm-hmm.
actually help drive a culture and make everyone move at the same time. So love that. That's one of the things that I think, when people go through like changes and org changes and dealing with like new sets of leaders, I always try to look at it positively. Sometimes they can be viewed negatively,
Yeah.
but positively in the sense that there's something to learn, and there's always something to learn from another company that you're partner, that you're merging with. And it's always good to see, like, try to take that approach because it's always going to be helpful. But beyond that, other than the merge, I think, being the first to stream on the internet is probably that the 10-year period from doing that first thing, being the first to stream and doing everything after that
Mm-hmm.
is probably the most fun I ever had in my entire life, even to this day.
Really?
Because, you're not, it's not often where you get to be at the center of creating something completely new that no one's done before, and
Yeah.
the entire world and industry is transformed by it, right?
Yeah.
Because Ben, you grew up streaming is like normal.
Yeah. It's just like go to like whatever app and it's there.
It's there. That was not the case when I was doing it, where everything was through linear to cable TV. You
Yeah.
had to sit in front of a TV at a certain time to watch it, or if you had a DVR, this little hardware box to record it with a TiVo.
Yeah.
But there was nothing on demand, and most importantly, it was only through a TV set.
Mm-hmm.
But to be at the forefront of streaming, which allowed anyone to watch any show, anytime, anywhere, on any surface,
Yeah.
really shifted the world. And to be at the beginning of it and driving that with a small team of people at Disney was probably the most fun. And we went, and gradually we kept doing little by little. We were the first to put shows on the iPad. We were the first folks to put actually high definition streams on the internet, because at the time it was in really, horrible, it's very pixelated and horrible definition. And then
Yeah.
people were like, yeah, it's going to be fine. No one's going to be able to do it in high def. And literally in 6 months, the team's like, hey, we have it in 720p. And we're like, okay, well, and the next thing, 1080p. Like that's how fast it worked.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part that we did over time. So that's probably the most fun I've had.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like you like transformed watching like all streaming for like everyone basically.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Yeah, it's really super fun.
Yeah, and by the time that you left Disney, where was like the streaming like platform like there like then? Like what had you like not like what had you accomplished, but like what was the state of it basically when you left?
Yeah, it was still kind of what I would say a side business for Disney. It wasn't
Mm.
a core piece of the strategy. It was one way to invest in reaching consumers where they were at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but it was before Disney Plus. So
Mm.
it was probably maybe 3 years before the company decided to launch Disney, 3 or 4 years before Disney Plus was launched. And that's when I
Yeah.
left.
Oh, so like what were like then like the core strategy that like they were working on, I guess, like before you like right before you left, if it wasn't for like the streaming.
Yeah, I think at the time before I left, one of the things I said, the most important thing the company could be doing is to go all in on streaming across the company, not just in TV, but in movies and everything, all under one brand,
Mm.
all the sports. And at the time, the feedback was, Albert, we're not ready for that because pay TV, so the cable and satellite business was so robust in driving cash for the company. It's like we won't do anything yet because that's a very important part of our business that we don't want to cannibalize.
Oh, so like that could hurt the other thing that they're
Yeah,
already like doing.
yeah, which I disagreed with because the streaming was not going to kill it. If anything, it was already on its way down, and if my general thing is if you don't invest to drive your business early in that area, it's going to be very costly to get in later.
Yeah. And over your 15-year time, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned from driving this digital transformation with such a large scale and this legacy brand of Disney?
Yeah, I think one, what I learned is make sure you're always focused on what consumers are doing, less about what the business, less about what you have to do to protect your business, but where is the consumer going? Look ahead of where they are, and make sure that you're prepared to meet that need. Too many people around me were probably dismissing it, except for at the time, our CEO and my boss were very forward thinking about how consumers were changing their behaviors, and so that gave me a much more air cover to do all these things. If I didn't have their support, it would have been harder to do this.
Yeah.
But I think it wound up, it definitely helped push the industry where it needed to be.
Yeah, so you always thought that people would eventually move to that streaming, that place instead, even from the very beginning?
Yeah, it was part of the reason, all the way back even when I had my first job at Fox. So, when I had my first job at Fox, this was I'm getting really, really Ben, you grew up in the right time. So the only thing that was distributed to the internet, it was dial-up. So the amount of data that could flow through the telephone lines was not enough to be able to do anything. And then in 1999, the throughput had gotten so big that you could actually, you could start streaming music. And that's when the music industry hit its biggest low point, because piracy was, you can rip your DVDs, you could, and a lot of people were getting a lot of music pirated, and the music industry had lost a lot of money. And so I saw this happening and said, you know what, there will be a point in time where the broadband bandwidth is going to get big enough to be able to push video in a really fast way. And that's when you start seeing some of that, where video was getting pirated, and you're just we have to do, if you don't find a way to present to consumers a viable, legitimate way to watch a show on the internet, then it will be pirated.
Yeah.
And it will happen to film and TV companies pretty quickly if we can't figure it out, which is part of the reason why the iTunes deal was done, part of the reason why we were very aggressive in streaming TV shows on the internet, and it's gotten to the point today where everything's streaming, really.
And looking back, how do you think Disney shaped the way we now consume digital media?
Yeah, no, I think Disney, with its brands and its content, it's meeting where customers are. The reality is I don't think any company really shapes anything, but it can serve its customers better if they're moving with where the customers are going.
Yeah. And as we move on to the third part of the podcast, talking more about your current career in your role at Amazon as head of Prime Video US. So why did you end up leaving Disney after 15 years, and how did that opportunity to join Amazon as the chief operating officer and co-head of television for Amazon Studios come about?
Yeah, well, after 10 years doing the digital job, I remember telling my boss that that I was at the end of this road, because there was no more firsts anymore, because we were first to do this, first to do this, first to do this, and we finally got to the point where we accomplished our entire roadmap. Really? Of our digital distribution. So it's there's nothing left to do except for optimizing our operations, and maybe there's probably strategy work that needs to get done. So, unless there's something interesting for me, I don't know what I want to do next, because there's not a whole lot left, and we should just, if we can build this as part of our business, we should reabsorb these teams into, where it needs to go. And the opportunity to build a studio from scratch came along. At Amazon, and I didn't want to redo what I did at Disney somewhere else. I didn't want to repeat that. And
Yeah.
so, when Amazon, was interested in finding someone to be a CEO to help scale. So they had already started a small part of Amazon Studios of 80 employees.
Mm.
Here was an opportunity for me to help build Amazon Studios from 80, and by the time I finished that job, it went from 80 to 1,500 people.
Wow.
And by the time I finished, we had produced ourselves one of the largest television shows in history called The Lord of the Rings, Rings of
Mm.
Power,
Yeah.
which is something that we produced ourselves. So like out of nothing, we were able to create a whole team of people to support the production of this massive, Tolkien, fantasy show.
Yeah. So like can you take me behind like what the title like means and like what you did on like a day to day or what you were like responsible for as that role like with that title of like COO?
Yeah, it's like chief operating officer is you're 100% focused on the operations.
Mhm.
So it's like a lot of it was defining on a day-to-day basis, like what do we need to actually, we have a goal of making 16 shows a year, and I soon grow to how do we grow so we're making 400 projects a year, right?
Wow.
And releasing, 150 actual titles a year on Prime Video. And
Mhm.
so you need to figure out how to scale that and what kind of people you need and how you operate, how much of it, what departments you need. So I had to build a casting team, a research team, a music team, a programming team, and you have to hire the right people to do those roles. And then you
Mhm.
have to like help facilitate all this stuff. And one of my first jobs was like, hey, you need to find a building and a studio lot to put all our people. And so
Yeah.
I'm literally standing in the office of the building and the project that I worked on for 5 years to get all of our shows and our support staff here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. And you're in the process of making TV shows, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of
So you're
fun.
just doing like a million like little things, just like everything for like operations
Yeah,
basically.
you have to have a high level plan, right? But then
Yeah.
you also then have to hire the right people to drive the detail work, right? And so
Mm.
if I need to build a music team, I have to hire a music executive, and doing a lot of recruiting, interviewing them, putting them in place, and then allowing them to build their team, and they can figure out how to manage, how are you going to support the music, supervision and choices for 16 shows, 30, 40, 100 shows all at once, and then on top of that globally around the world. And so by the time I left, we had built a studio that was producing 400 titles at any point in time all around the
Yeah.
world, either Japan, India, Latin America, Europe, US. We were just making content everywhere.
Yeah, and running all of those operations at that scale must have been like pretty overwhelming at times. So like how did you manage it without getting like lost in all the chaos of like all the people, all the projects, like everything?
But you kind of focus on the big things, and
Mm.
the most important thing is hiring the right people to handle the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of all the projects you oversaw during your time at Amazon Studios, what was like your favorite show or film that stands out as like your favorite that like you worked on, I guess?
I would say the actually when you look back in my office,
Yeah.
these are all the shows that I personally invested my own time in and getting off the ground, and
Mm.
I feel really good about. And so um, everything from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel to The Boys back here to Reacher over there, Daisy Jones and the Six and Fleabag up here, they're all shows that I love, and I'm so glad we did them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what was like your part in like even like doing the shows? Like did you like come up with like the ideas or like just like or what was like your role in that, I guess, like for these shows?
Most of the time saying yes, we should do it, which makes it easy. That's probably the easiest job. Like the hard work is actually with our creative teams that are looking at the material day to day, making sure the quality's there, working with the showrunners and the writers and all the people who are. And we have, every single show has a different set of creative, leaders and creative artists and talent
Mm.
working on them. And my part in it is to make sure that everything's going okay, right? So,
Mm.
like, if there's issues with writing or there's issues with a resource, like, oh, the cost is coming too high, then I would get involved and say, well, like, how do we bring the cost down? Is there ways of changing this? With the boys, it was literally like, Albert, we have this incredible show, and it's not like anything else, and we would love your support and approving this to be made. And
Yeah.
I'm like, great, I love this, and let's go and let's make the boys.
Yeah. So you're kind of like the supervisor saying like, yeah, go ahead, go do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you get like promoted like upwards to like the head of Prime US Video, and now what are you like responsible for in like your current job?
Yeah. So my current job is a little bit like my old one, but a little bit different. So my job still is having a say on what we make and what we decide to put on Prime Video, but
Mm.
I'm no longer in the day-to-day operations of the studio. So I don't oversee how the shows get made day to day. I don't see that. Instead, I'm on the what we call the service side, and I oversee the P&L, which means that I am responsible for the growth and the health and the business of Prime Video, not just the content. So I have to look
Mm.
at our marketing. I have to look at are we getting more people using Prime Video every day? How do we
Mm-hmm.
get more people to watch it? Are we making enough money to cover all the costs that we invest in, from the tech to the content? So it is, it's the management of the business part,
Yeah.
and the only thing that crosses over into my old job is that now I will sit in the meetings and I'll continue to review the shows that are being presented and say, yeah, we should do this, or here are the types of shows we need. Hey, studio, like, what are the best options we got? And they would come in, pitch the things that they want to make and move forward with.
Yeah. And how did you like move up to that role from your prior one at Amazon Studios?
Yeah, it's my boss asked me to do the job. Like a lot of things, my boss asked me if I wanted to do the job, and I said, yeah, I think this makes sense, and I'm happy to do it. And I that's just, I think in many of the roles that I had, it goes back down to the opportunities were presented. I didn't really have to, I mean, knock on wood, I didn't have to push too hard to ask for these roles. They wound up saying, hey, we need someone to do this. We thought of you, Albert, and is this something that you're interested in doing? So I'm grateful for, all my bosses that gave me opportunities to do cool things.
Yeah. And how do you like being on more like the business or like larger, not on like the operations as much side of like the business for Amazon Prime compared to like your other jobs?
I think it's all different, right? So it depends
Mm.
on the day the day I feel. Some days I feel like, I wish I was, in the middle of making a TV show or a movie and doing all that. And then
Yeah.
some days I go, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. I'm happy doing what I'm doing now. And I think the thing that I find fun in the job, it is thinking about the big picture and then working with people. And I think at this point of my career, I think I do more coaching.
Mm.
It's a more of, you think of yourself as a coach and a goal setter,
Mm.
because you're no
Like to the
longer.
people like around you, like the
Yeah,
other people in like the organization.
yeah, and you might wind up connecting things because you do see a lot of different things. Most of my job is pushing my teams to think bigger. So it's
Mm.
like, hey, we want to do this, and it's like, yep, but this is kind of small. How do we make this idea even bigger so that it has a bigger impact on the business? And how do we think about it more strategically? And
Mm.
so I find myself playing more of that role, and when the teams are coming up with ideas, and then problem solving, or hey, you guys are working on this. I know I'm aware that this team working on this other thing. If you guys get together, I actually think there might be a bigger idea, and now we're thinking about it more cross-functionally. That might be more interesting, right? And so on a day-to-day basis, I kind of feel like that's where most of my value starts to get, added on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I personally like love sports, and I've seen how like Prime Video has made some like pretty big moves into live sports like Thursday night football, like WNBA. Like why has sports become such like a strategic priority for Amazon?
Sports, even though sports is expensive, and it is, sports is a
Yeah.
very expensive business to be in. It is one of the most top, highly regarded, highly viewed um, programming around, and it's kind of guaranteed. Meaning, so even though it's expensive, you're going to get people there. So
Mm.
and these are also reserved to some of the top the top tier sports, right? So clearly
Like
NFL,
football, yeah, basketball.
NFL, if you invest in it, maybe even if expensive, you can actually shift behavior. And here's the thing: if you want people to try something new, history has shown that sports rights can actually bend the curve. Meaning, anytime in the history. So I'll give you like a history lessons for people who never had this.
Yeah.
Broadcast TV,
Hmm.
right, was how most people watched TV, and they had sports on it. And then came cable, and cable didn't take off until ESPN decided to invest in football.
Mm.
As soon as that happened, cable took off in a much bigger trajectory. And then when satellite, like DirecTV distribution came around, satellite TV came around, guess what DirecTV did? They came up with the Sunday Ticket NFL package as an
Yeah.
exclusive thing to drive that. And then in other countries, like in Europe or in Asia, English Premier League is the top tier sport. And once they got those rights, like Sky or any of
Hmm.
these satellite companies started to take off because it changed the behavior of people wanting to like, look, I want to watch this soccer game.
Yeah.
I gotta watch it. I guess I have to buy the satellite. So you can literally bend the curve. So for us on streaming, sports is kind of makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
And sort of like if you're gonna try to bend the curve and get people to stream more, you'll be surprised. You're living in a world where everyone your colleagues streams. We're still living
Yeah.
in a world where there are people who don't stream yet,
Yeah.
and sports is the last thing that's on cable. And now that we have it, more and more people are going to streaming.
Yeah, and that's kind of like about like your point about like you got to go where like the consumer is. Kind of like you can see that pattern, I guess, like where like sports like kind of leads the way in like in a sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and like what's one decision or pivot you've made like recently that you think will shape the future of Prime Video in a major way?
Um, I don't think it's my decision. I think it was more of I think it's the big decision that we made as a business is to be more overtly um, clear that Prime Video is not just about the Prime membership, but about a whole marketplace of streaming services.
Mm.
Meaning, if you go to the Prime Video app, you can subscribe to Max, you can subscribe to Paramount Plus, you can subscribe to like over 200 different subscription services all in one app, right?
Yeah.
So you could be watching an NFL season. You could, like, I'm subscribed to Paramount Plus. I could watch not only Thursday Night Football, but I can also watch the games on CBS and on the same app,
Yeah.
right? And as we start to get more partners, we will, we can have almost as much as sports as we can as ESPN,
Yeah.
and you can watch everything. And that's a big pivot that I think we've made in terms of our business.
Yeah, and now we're going to move on to the fourth part of the podcast, talking about challenges and overcoming obstacles. Being an Asian American in leadership role comes with its own sets of challenges. What were some of the obstacles you may have faced in your industry, particularly due to your background, if you have faced any?
Yeah, I think most of the things that I think Asians and myself face and continue to face is, I think, the uh, leadership expectations of your companies. So, and how to get promoted. Like I've been lucky; most of my promotions have come through opportunities that my bosses have given me. But oftentimes people struggle with like, well, how do I get promoted? Like, what are the things that I need to do? And the one thing that I think as Asians we have the biggest challenge is to the extent that it influences the way you communicate
Mm.
or think about the world is if you have been raised like I have in a household that is deeply rooted in Confucianism, it's very difficult to get past that value system to figure out how to succeed in Western business cultures. So what
Mm-hmm.
that means is, right, like even like as I said, what I learned from my parents, work ethic, work really hard, keep your head down, don't make any noise, don't be an agitator.
Yeah.
Follow your elders, but also follow what your boss tells you.
Mm-hmm.
And what that leads to is always being viewed, and I think this is fairly common, as Asians are great number twos, but not the number one.
Mm.
Right? So if you have a leader who needs a really loyal number two to get the work done,
Yeah.
you got that job. It's like you have a good
Yeah.
shot at that job. But having a shot at the number one job,
Mm-hmm.
much harder, because not necessarily that people look at us differently, but it's the expectations to take that number one job aren't always in alignment with how we were raised.
Mm.
And what that means is sometimes being number one, you have to be the loudest voice. You have to take risks. You have to think out of the box. You have to speak up. Sometimes you have to fight and debate, right? Those
Yeah.
are all things that are like your parents tell you, like, don't ever do. Right?
Yeah.
Like don't like it's like my parents would say, even if we're wrong, even if we are wrong, you can't argue against us. You have to say okay, right? That was my parents, like, clearly I didn't agree, but like, nope, you can't fight back. If we're wrong, we're still right. Just keep
Yeah.
going. And that might work in a Chinese household, but it doesn't work in business.
Yeah.
And so, they expect you to speak up. And so most of the time when early in my career, the feedback is always, Albert, you don't speak up in these meetings. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know when to get in. It's like, what do you mean you don't? Because you don't know when to get in, because we're not trained or told you're allowed to jump into a conversation. You have to wait for your turn,
Yeah.
right? And so it took me probably, all that time from there and all the way through Disney to unlearn that behavior.
Mm.
And still, at the same time, I still have challenges, even at this stage, of trying to get over that. So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing where I think being Asian, the biggest influence that being Asian has in Western cultures. Like if you put me in a Chinese company, I would have to relearn everything that I learned here. You're right, because
Yeah.
Chinese culture will operate differently. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and how do you think like this next generation or even people like in leadership roles as like yourselves can like help Asian Americans get to that like number one spot, not like the number two?
Yeah, I think part of it is, one, the farther you are away from Confucianism, the easier it is to not have the cultural contexts that define the way you want to operate in business.
Mm-hmm.
So, the more quote Americanized you are, I think it's easier to do that. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it is. Like if your parents came from, Taiwan or China or any Asian, if they're still first generation immigrants, I think kids of first generation immigrants will feel exactly what I felt. But if
Yeah.
you're third or fourth, I think
Yeah.
you're far enough away so that you're more acculturated.
Yeah, because
Um,
I'm third because my grandparents immigrated, but yeah.
Yeah. See, so Ben, right now, like, you're super entrepreneurial, right? Like
Yeah.
I would never have thought of doing this at your age. So
Yeah.
I think, that's step one. And then the
Mhm.
other thing too that I would say, Ben, that's really important, that comes part of this, which I don't think is appreciated as much in Asian culture, is verbal communication is probably one of the most powerful tools in American business.
Mm.
How you are able to influence and communicate in a business setting, either in front of a large group or even a small group, probably has one of the biggest sort of impacts on your ability to be a leader or be recognized as a leader.
Mm.
And that's why it's so hard when I see, like, if you did immigrate and your English is hard,
Yeah.
it makes it really difficult. Or you grew up in a household like I did, who it wasn't really encouraged to speak up,
Yeah.
right? So those are the things that can be barriers, and it's people have to get past that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And what role has your cultural background played in shaping your leadership style and perspective as a business leader? And how have you found ways to use it as like a strength in your career?
Yeah. So I think my cultural background. So the one great thing about Confucianism is that there is a high value placed on group teamwork.
Mm.
right? Being a part of a larger group and working on behalf of the group. Um, and so I think that's helped because teams are super important, and trying to bring everyone along at the same time is going to be critical to your success. But even so, that's one. I think that's awesome because there's
Hmm.
something about Western culture where individualism starts to play out a little bit more than teamwork.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to kind of adopt both of these or somewhere find the middle of how do I break out of my, you know, Asian, Chinese, conformatisms
Mm.
and become a leader that the Western culture values, but at the same time manage like I was an Asian leader where I'm bringing everyone along. I mean, to me, that's a really good combination. So I think that's how being able to blend both the what best parts of Western and Eastern culture is really important.
Hmm. Yeah, and as we move on to the last part of the podcast, talking about advice and inspiration, you touched on like that piece of advice about like verbal communication. But I was also wondering like, what's another like best piece of advice for being successful in business, like in like America?
Never assume you know everything.
Mm.
No matter how long you've been doing it. Actually, you always come at something thinking that you don't know anything.
Mm.
Because most of the time you probably don't. uh,
Yeah.
and every situation and problem is different, and so and don't always think the same solution or the same solution is going to work for something else.
Mm.
You have to really understand the context of the problem,
Mm. Because
and then
everything is
really
different.
everything is different. You can have a consistent framework. You mean in terms of the structure in which you approach a problem, but
Mm.
your context may be very different variables that wind up determining your solution is actually pretty different. But your
Mm.
approach in thinking about the problem could be the same. It's just the output of the actual solution may be something totally different.
Yeah, so you kind of like have like a sort of a template of how you're gonna like start looking at the problem, but like once you get into it, it's like gonna be different like most of the times.
Right, right.
Yeah. And through your experience, what do you think makes someone a great leader?
Um, I think someone who can communicate clearly, someone who can inspire people to be their best um, self,
Yeah.
and listening.
Mm.
More listening than talking.
Yeah. Yeah, someone I actually had was like telling me this thing about like your ears are like more important than like your mouth sometimes. Like listening is like very, very important.
Yeah. It is really important. I will tell you that, I don't know if my peers or like, there's nothing worse than being in a room listening to a peer who just likes to hear them talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just roll your eyes and go, oh well.
Yeah, it's like sometimes when like I'm in class and then there's someone just like rambling on and it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mentorship can play a huge role in one's success. Did you have any key mentors? And if so, what was some of the best advice that they gave to you that had a significant impact on your career?
Yeah, I would say every single boss that I've had has been my mentor, so I've been lucky.
Mm.
Um, and the things they've taught me have been things that I carry with me, which is how do I think about these problems in a bigger way, in a more strategic way.
Mm.
Because what I find, and that's what a leader does, I think sometimes we get caught up in the thing, meaning I've got this project and I want it to be approved, and I'm going to do a bunch of these.
Yeah.
And you'll see all these approvals for these. And the first question my boss asked me was like, okay, these are interesting, but what's the criteria? What is the criteria that you're evaluating on why this project makes sense? And that was like, oh, I've never thought about it that way. Why? What is the criteria? Like, what is? And that forced me to think about the high level strategy of why we do this and how does this deal or this project fit into that higher level strategy. And
Hmm.
it's always pushed. That completely transformed the way I thought about things.
Yeah. And how do you define success now, and how has that definition changed since the beginning of your career?
I think when beginning my career was really about making enough money. I,
That's very common
as with
answer.
any, we got to pay the bills, make sure you're making good money. That's
Hmm.
always been sort of like the number one goal. But I think at this point, it's really about success. To me, is being in a place where you feel that you've learned a lot about your own character, right, and what you're good at and what you're not good at, and
Mm-hmm.
then having a role or a project that continues to test those limits to see what you can actually accomplish. It's not how much you money make, it's not the titles you have, it's not how much people you lead. It's really like, what are have I been challenged, and then did I meet that challenge? And am
Mm-hmm.
I constantly growing? Because I think that's ultimately, you kind of you come into this world with nothing and you'll leave this world with nothing. But there's
Yeah.
anything you kind of um, want to be able to do is like, did I fully optimize who I could actually be and what I could actually do? I think that's the thing, and so you're never done,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really love learning about your journey and how you really like shaped the transformation of like streaming on Disney. That was so cool. And now what you're doing at Amazon. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.